Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rooted. This morning, we're going to look at a very interesting gentleman by the name of Mr. Charles Spurgeon and his lectures to my students. We will provide these lectures to you in short, concise videos. But first up, let's just see who was Mr. Charles Spurgeon. He was commonly referred to as the Prince of Preachers in the late Victorian era in England in the 1800s. He had a tremendous work ethic and was highly intelligent, and he founded multiple ministries. His sermons, however, was the thing that drew in large crowds. He really was a master orator. He founded the Pastors' College and provided training to his students in the form of lectures to my students that he gave to them himself. It was a practical how-to guide for ministers entering ministry. And his ultimate goal was to train up ministers and not scholars. So, lecture 1, the minister's self-watch. The minister is a workman's tool. The minister itself, the minister is the tool, and it's important, according to Spurgeon, to keep this tool in excellent working order. If this tool, yourself, the minister, is in the best spiritual condition, he will accomplish the most, and it's vital to pursue this. It's also important to do this continuously. It's a lifelong process. You will never get to the end of improvement. Pursue this as a lifelong learning. Spurgeon said to train, and train some more those vocal powers and abilities, because that's the tool that's being used when preaching. It's wonderful that he said that we must never forget our earnestness and be able to truthfully and in earnestness weep just as Christ did, like when he, for instance, wept over Lazarus. It's important, very important for the minister to not neglect his physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being. It's important to nurture this, especially if you are a minister, and to pursue this with a vital force within, because then God will bless that person and in his ministry. The minister must be born again. I know this is self-explanatory sometimes, but it has to be said, and Spurgeon made this clear. He cannot proclaim that which he does not know. If the minister is not born again, how can he pursue, how can he tell people about being regenerated? How can he tell people about the living God? He mentioned that if you have degrees or multiple authorships or books or even paid for seminary fees, that does not qualify a minister. That does not qualify a minister. Further, natural ability or mental prowess, these things do not qualify a minister either. Very interesting things that Spurgeon mentioned. He goes on to say that a minister that's not regenerated cannot have fellowship with mature Christians, because he does not understand their questions and their trials. He cannot have fellowship with them. He cannot show them the path. A minister that's not regenerated, that's not born again, cannot show the path. He cannot show the path or tell people about the path to walk in life with Christ if he hasn't walked there himself. The minister has a divine calling. It's interesting that Spurgeon says it is divine calling, meaning that it's not a vocation that can be changed. You're in this calling, all in, forever, all the time. He cautions and says a minister that only wants a system in place that provides a structure for good music or preaching or oration, that must be discouraged, because that minister will also, in his opinion, sometimes, or most of the time, have a misstep in his character. He's not in it for the real and for the correct reasons. God never saved the man for being a minister. Very interesting. God never saved the man for being a minister. He alluded here to the words spoken by Richard Baxter. And Spurgeon lastly cautions that we must be what we want others to be. We must be what we want to persuade others to be. Earnestness, truthfulness. The minister and his character. The minister has to be the choicest pick, the number one draftee, advanced in knowledge and really mature in his faith. It's no ordinary position. The minister is no ordinary person. Because that position is for no ordinary person, he will not be an ordinary person. He will be a very peculiar person, according to Spurgeon. The fear of the Lord will teach the minister, and especially the young minister, and it will mature his spirit in the Lord. The minister has to be of the highest moral standard. His character has to be above reproach, always. The minister has to be very aware of his dependency on God, according to Spurgeon, especially the Holy Spirit. He can do nothing without God. He really has to understand that, acknowledge that. Piety, the minister's piety. If the minister's piety decreases, so will his spiritual force. If the minister's piety, his holiness decreases, so will his spiritual force, according to Spurgeon. And then, second to last, the minister is the spiritual clock, the compass of the congregation. And if that spiritual clock is broken, or the time is off, so will everybody's be in that church or in that ministry. And he also cautioned to be careful, especially for ministers, that the temptations will be more subtle and insidious, not bland, but specifically target at their character. In terms of the minister and his conduct, Spurgeon mentioned that it's vital for the minister to be the same in and out of the church. There should be no contradiction in his conduct. The minister is in and out of the church the same. The minister should be aware of sins of omission, not necessarily sins of commission, sins that are committed, but especially things that are not done, that are neglected. The minister's character must be more persuasive than his speech. That's a wonderful statement by Spurgeon. The minister's character must be more persuasive than his speech. Don't tell me, show me. He must remember at all times he is a minister, in and out of the church, in recreation, family gatherings, he still remains a minister. He must be mighty in word and deed, just as Moses was. He must be a man after God's heart. Spurgeon mentioned that if the minister is a man after God's own heart, that will draw in people to his ministry. That will draw in people to the church and ultimately draw in people to Christ. He cautioned and said, there are ministers that break with their character and with their conduct. Alluding to Saint Austin, he said that with doctrine they build up, but how loathsome it is, because with their lives they destroy. Ministers must be careful even in these little things, the little vices. People are very easily disappointed by ministers, and it's difficult to persuade them otherwise. People are really very easily disappointed by ministers, and it's difficult to persuade them otherwise, because that's the way they view the church. Ministers should avoid little debts, unpunctuality, gossiping, nicknaming, petty quarrels. Should avoid familiarities and indulgences. The ministers should not self-indulge in anything as to provide any sort of contempt to people in the ministry. The minister should not conform to the newest trend or the newest trendy thing that came out. They should not conform to anything that passes by. Ministers should not be a slave to refinement. They should not be a slave to refinement. However, they should also avoid anything that's on the verge of coarseness, indelicate. That should be avoided. And remember, the ministers are always ministers. That's the important thing that Spurgeon wanted us to know. You are ministers in and out of the church, in recreation, in family gatherings. You are always a minister. Remember that. It's not a vocation that can be changed. And as always, morality, honesty, and integrity should follow the minister everywhere he goes. Always. So just to summarize, the minister is his own best tool. It's important to keep this tool in the best spiritual condition. The minister must be born again. He cannot show the path if he has not walked that path himself. He cannot provide the way if he doesn't know what way it is. He needs to be regenerated. He needs to have a personal relationship with God. The minister must be a man of the highest moral character. Remember, with his doctrine he builds up, and with his character and conduct he destroys. Loathsome. Spurgeon warned against that. And then the minister must be the same person in and out of the church. Doesn't matter where he finds himself, he's always a minister. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and please like and subscribe if you want more of these videos. Until we meet again next time, bye bye.